All right. Yeah, welcome to the Data Watch Friday today. My name is Marc Winkelmann. I'm working as a BI consultant for Scalefree. And yeah, last week we got a question regarding how to handle CDC and multi-active data. So, and this is also my topic for today, obviously. So let us have a look first into the scenario. So the initial situation. And then I would like to, because it's really an interesting question and an interesting scenario, and there are multiple, let's say, solutions for it. No one, I would say, is the, yeah, a very perfect solution, but let us have a look into different ways on how to handle this. But let us explain a bit further the initial situation. So loading CDC data into multi-active satellites. So the challenge here is that the primary key is not the business key. So first of all, but this is very often the case, right? So that the primary key in the source system is usually just a technical ID, which is just known by the source system itself. But from business perspective, you are usually selecting a different column or different columns in combination to really represent a business object from business perspective. So, but most likely the relationship between a technical primary key and the business key is one-to-one in the source system, right? But in this case here, we have the situation that the primary key is unique at the point in time, but the business key is not. So I created here an example on my own. So how it should look like, as I understand the question here, is that we have a customer ID here. This is the technical primary key in the source system. We have the real business key here as well. And I also added the load date timestamp to really represent the multi-activity here. So here we can see that the customer ID is different in these two rows here. We have the 1 and the 2. So that means we have two objects or two rows also in the source system, but the business key is the same. Here we have a more, let's say, speaking key here, right? So C minus or dash 1, 2, 3, and here again. And the time as we got the data is also the same. All right, so because I don't know the situation very in detail, so as solution number one, or what I would do if I see that is I would first check whether the data is really multi-active, because in some cases it happens that, for example, the ID or a record gets deleted in the system and gets recreated with the same business key. But of course, because we create a new record in the source system, the ID, the technical ID changes now, right? So that means it is maybe not multi-active. Maybe we have a sequence in the changes which happened, right? So this is the first thing I would check. Also here to give you an example, here we have the two rows again with the customer ID 1 and 2, but with the same business key, C123, and the load date timestamp is also the same. But what if the CDC tag, or here the create, update, delete tag, delivers us a delete and immediately after that a create? So, and when we have a look into other columns, other technical columns in the source system, we may detect a sequence on what happened exactly when, because I assume you don't get the data really in real time here on a really high precision on the timestamp. You most likely get it in small batch frequencies. I would assume maybe every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, or even just every day one batch file. So that means as soon as we get the data in this batch mode, we flag it with the load date timestamp, right? So set the load date timestamp during the ingestion process. But when we look into the detail, when it really happened, we may detect a small change here or a small difference here, that the delete happened here at second 23 and immediately recreated at second 24. So this may change or this may result in an order on what happened here. So basically what I want to say here is this is then not multi-active in this case. So what I would do here then is to create a normal satellite with an adjusted load date timestamp. So what we do in such cases is to either you have kind of a subsequence number or any kind of column, a reliable column, which tells you the order when what happened, and use this to add on the highest precision in the load date timestamp and add a number. For example, here in this case, we would use the event timestamp and we detect the order. So this happened first here, the delete, and 1 second after the insert or the create here happened. So, and this is the order is then here that happened first, and then the create happened next. So we still keep the original loaded timestamp for that what happened first, but add a second in this case. Usually it's a millisecond or nanosecond. And then we add it here. And this is to modify the load date timestamp to not have multi-active data in case it is not multi-active. Okay, so this is the first thing what I would do to check if that's the case and adjust this in this usually very early in the staging area and modify the load date timestamp a little bit to really have an order and not exactly the same load date timestamp. So this is the first thing here. Okay, let us have a look into solution number 2, suggestion number 2. And now we assume, yes, it is multi-active, right? And the most straightforward approach would be to create a sorry, I called it CDC satellite here, a multi-active satellite, I mean here, create a multi-active satellite and do the delta check on the business key plus the multi-active attribute. Just a quick hint here, I'm using business keys and not hash keys because it's better to present it here. But of course, we can assume that we use hash keys as well here instead of the business keys. But the only difference on the loading procedure from the staging into the multi-active satellite is that we don't do the delta checks just on the hash key or on the business key. We do it on the business key plus the multi-active attribute. So that would mean we the multi-active satellite, the primary keys in the satellite is usually the hash key plus the load date timestamp. In this case, we would have the hash key and the load date timestamp and the multi-active attribute, which could be here in this case the customer ID. And this is our anchor point, right? So this is the base on which we detect the deltas. So that means we don't compare the data just on the C123 key, but on the combination of C123 and the 1, and of course here also on C123 and the 2. So that means the loading procedure is the same as for the standard satellite, but now we just add the multi-active attribute in addition to the business key as part of your delta check. That's it. The problem we have here, or let's say an uncomfortable result we produce here is that we need a special point in timetable, because this was also part of the question, by the way, and then how to create the point in timetables afterwards. So because we get based on CDC the changes on the finest grain on row level, right? So that means that we have an unsynchronized business key load date timestamp here, and this can be tricky, or this needs special attention when we create our point in time tables. So I added one example here where we get the change now on customer ID number 2, not the 1, right? So the 1 is still the same, but we only get it on the customer ID number 2. So that means we also just insert one new row, right? So we don't insert the full block of the customer, right? So we just insert one multi-active attribute for the customer with new data. So when we have a look on the third row here, we insert again customer ID number 2 with the business key C123, but now with the load date timestamp, which is a bit later, right? So because we got the delta here. So, but that means now to get the most recent data out of the satellite based on the customer C123, we have to join into this table and searching for C123 and this load date timestamp and this customer ID, and the one here, I mean this one here, this is the first one, right? And the third one, this is what we want to see. We don't want to see if we want to get the most recent delta, we don't want to see row number 2 anymore, right? So, but that means we have now 2 different load date timestamps. And usually the cool thing on the point in time table is that you just have the combination key load date timestamp, and then you join into the satellite. But this is now no longer enough. You need also the customer ID in addition to really to really find your delta in the satellite. So here, this is different to when we compare CDC data with full data extracts from the source system, because this is then a bit better because we get every day, we get the full extract from the source. And what we do in multi-active satellite when we get the full extract of the source is that even if just one small part of the multi-active components, for example here, only the customer ID 2 changed, the 1 is still the same, but when we get the full load, we would insert the customer ID 1 again. Yes, it's redundant data then in that case, but we would add the 1 again in addition here, so we would have 4 rows and also tag it with the newest load date timestamp. And this allows us then to again go with the hash key and load date timestamp and find all active or all most recent deltas in the multi-active satellite. So that means we can add a PID table usually has entries for multiple satellites, and we simply can add the multi-active satellite in addition to that. This is no longer possible with this approach. I mean, what you could do here, I didn't that before, but in the loading procedure, you could do the following. As soon as you detect a change on a multi-active part of the customer here in this case, that you also retrieve the other ones, right? So that you also, let's say, proactively also get from the target satellite, that you also get the one, right? That you search for the other multi-active components for the same customer, and then also insert the full block, right? So the full block, so all multi-active components for the same customer, and this makes the downstream processes much easier. Then you just need one point in time table and so on. So this would be solution number 2. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, let's have a look into another one. Solution number 3. You could maybe remodel it. For example, you could put the satellite on the link, because right now, if we, I didn't create a model here, but if we have a model, or the model I have in mind is I have a customer hub here. I have usually the multi-active satellite here, right? But the customer table in the source system usually has some other business object references, maybe to a company, maybe to an employee, maybe to whatever, right? So that means there's usually a customer link as well, right? And in this customer link you create from the source system table here, you could put the multi-active attribute as a dependent child key there. So that means the link handles the multi-activity here automatically in this case. And then you can simply create a standard satellite on this link. Let's say what's not so nice here is that the satellite is no longer directly describing the business object hub, but it's describing the relationship between the customer and the other components. So this depends a little bit on how you query the data afterwards, if this is a good remodeling decision or not. Okay. So that means, to show you the example how the link hash key would be calculated, it would be the business key C123 and the 1 with the ID, but the 1 itself wouldn't be a business object, right? It's just a technical ID, but we need this to have a uniqueness. So we need to add this also to the link hash key. And of course, some additional keys here. Right, and this is how it would look like in a link. So we would have a standard link, a standard satellite, and the grain, the multi-active grain is handled then automatically in the link. Okay, and the last solution I have for you is not the preferred way, but of course also possible, is to use the primary key from the source system as kind of a business key, or let's say a key on which we create a hub for. And model here kind of a technical customer hub. So that means because we have now, instead of the C1 to 3 on which we want to hang the data on, we would store a 1 and a 2 in this technical customer hub. But in addition to that, you can also additionally create the real customer hub, let's say, and create a mapping between them by simply create a link between the technical customer hub and the business, the real customer hub. So this is usually a one-to-one relationship, right? And to resolve based on the technical key, to resolve what's the real business key, you just simply join into the real business key hub. And you can also just put the business key additionally into the satellite as descriptive attribute. Also here, not best practice. So by the standards or by the, it is usually not necessary because we have the business keys already in the hub. So it's redundant a little bit to put them into the satellites as well. But in some cases, they help a little bit to make the querying a bit easier on the way out. Okay. So all right, so these are my 4 suggestions here. I see a little bit couple of comments here in the chat. So thank you first of all for the question and the participation here in the chat. Let me read them a little bit. Customer 1 and 2 created. Customer 1 deleted on. Okay, so the initial creator says. Let me go back to the very beginning with the example here. And you say customer 1 and 2 created on the 1st of August, and customer 1 deleted on the 2nd of. So but that means, as I understand, they are active at the same time, even for a short time, but they are multi-active for a short time, right? So then we have to ignore solution number 1, where I say check the multi-activity. Then you have to go with solution 2, 3, or 4. Okay. Another question or another comment here is if there's possibility of business key change. For example, customer ID equals 2, customer business key C999. Okay, then you will have problem with selecting the correct records. Yes, RAM key is away, but these are CDC data. Why don't to model it using non-historized link? Yes, let me start with the last thing. CDC data, why not model as non-historized link? Yes, CDC data looks like it's transaction, right? So we get the transactions from the source systems, but that usually doesn't mean that the data itself is transactional. So I mean, the data what modeling the decision is also related on how I will query later the data, right? So if I have data I want to see in a line chart and I treat them as transactional data, as events, right? As sales transactions, for example, bank account transactions, then I would agree, yes, definitely load them into a non-historized link. But if we are talking about master data and data which can change and we want to see the status as it was at a specific point in time, then the normal way of modeling is a hub and a satellite, and the satellite gets or catches the changes. And this would be the way to go then. Sorry. Okay, so therefore, even if CDC delivers you the transactions from the source systems, all the operations, the inserts, updates, and deletes, but if we have a more business perspective on the data and on how we model the data in Data Vault, I would go for master data, and which can change over, where the data can change over time, satellite, and the parent, which is either hub or link. But as soon as we have really transactional data and is treated as transactional data, then yes, I would go for non-historized link. I mean, there's also the other way around, right? So what if we have data which is usually, or it's analyzed in a let's say transactional way, right? So I want to create aggregates. I want to show on a line chart the what happened at which time, and now the source system delivers us updates. So here, what I like to do here in this case is to create counter bookings, because if the source system doesn't deliver me counter bookings, if it's not a kind of a general ledger system, right? So which I mean, if I pay too much to someone, and let's say I get an invoice, I have to pay 100 euro, I pay 110 euros, for example, and we have to make the correction. The correction is never an edit in the initial bank transfer, right? In a bank transaction, they would send me 10 euros back, or maybe they would send me the whole money back, and I have to send them 100 euros, something like this, right? And this is what I would expect, or what we understand with transactional data. And if that's in some cases, but in some cases we want to see the data like this, but the source system delivers us updates, so physical updates. And this is a problem, especially for the performance on how to analyze the data then afterwards, because you cannot run mathematical operations like sum or average, minimum, maximum, just on the satellite data, satellite table where you have deltas in there, right? Doesn't work. The numbers would be way too high, especially for the sum. So that means what we do instead is we create counter transactions to, simulate, basically a counter transaction to correct them properly in a transactional way. So it's also going the other way around. Okay, that was one point. And the other one is, what if the customer, the ID equals 2 and the business key gets, for example, C9999. So that means the customer ID is the same, but the customer business key changes. Yeah, this is definitely an additional challenge. Yeah, I think this is a change in the business key itself. I think we have to use the same as link here in addition then, right? So based on the business key, so that means as soon as we see the customer ID is the same, but the business key changes over time, right? So we can do that by using window function, partition by customer ID, and have a look on whether the business key is the same or not, and create the same as link here. So I'm not sure if that worked in the full details, but this would be my first approach here to create to add a same as link here in this case. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next Data What Friday sessions. Usually Michael's doing it, so maybe the next one, Michael's on vacation at the moment. That's why I jumped in. But of course, feel free um, to submit more questions like this, and we will catch them and provide you an answer. And in addition to that, um, there's a new platform, or basically a new platform, or move from an old platform to a new one, the Data Innovators Exchange. So this is an open community. So no payments, everything is it's a collaborative community where also we are very active. So guys from Scalefree, but from other companies as well. And we already have a lot of good conversations there. So feel free to join, and also ask questions you have there to get opinions from other peoples as well, right? So this is one thing. And of course, don't forget the Data Dreamland this year. It takes place in September, on the 23rd and 24th of September here in Germany, in Hanover. So save your ticket, and hope to see you there.